2022 will go down as likely the craziest year in wrestling history. It will be remembered mainly for things that happened outside of the ring, but I believe that in the midst of all the chaos, it's important to remember that it was also a year filled with amazing storylines, matches, and moments, and today we will be covering the top 10 AEW matches in 2022. Number 10, Swerve in Our Glory versus the acclaimed AEW Tag Team Championships, All Out. Perhaps no one in pro wrestling had a more prominent rise this past year than the acclaimed. Max Caster and Anthony Bowens both became major crowd favorites due in part to Max Caster's entrance raps before matches and Bowens' over the top energy. Without a doubt, though, the thing that made them fan favorites the most was Billy Gunn and Scissor Me Daddy Ass catching on quicker than Linsanity. Wow. Imagine saying that sentence to someone that wasn't a wrestling fan and expecting them to know what you're talking about. Anyway, the Chicago crowd in this match is what really sets it apart. It seemed like everyone in the building that night wanted to see the acclaimed capture the belts. From beautiful back and forth with Bowens and Swerve, where the two men appeared to have chemistry right off the bat, Keith Lee being an absolute freak, Max Caster getting to have his 2004 John Cena Survivor Series moment where he did this to Keith Lee. Unfortunately, what keeps this match from being even higher on the list is the fact that the wrong team won. Swerve and Our Glory retained their titles against the White Hot Acclaimed, and because of that, the finish kind of falls flat comparative to the rest of the contest. Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee are both amazingly talented individuals, but that night was the Acclaims, and the crowd showed that. This was corrected later on at Grand Slam in a pretty good match, but with a great crowd reaction and seeing the Acclaimed winning the tag team titles. However, it just wasn't the same as this night. Number 9, Dax Harwood versus Will Ospreay, Dynamite Road Rager. Dax Harwood at one point in 2022 was a lot of people's top wrestler of the year candidate, and he did that all while being a member of a tag team. Tag team stars getting that level of praise and respect is highly rare these days, but it was 100% deserved. Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, but this video isn't about him right now, sorry Cash, is absolutely incredible. A student of the game, a pro wrestler's pro wrestler, smooth and controlled, footwork and timing. I could go on and on. If you're an absolute nerd like me about wrestling, then without doubt, you love watching Dax wrestle. Yet, after all that praise, Will Ospreay might be even better. Will Ospreay, at just 29 years old, already has a list of classic matches in New Japan that would make even Chris Jericho shudder. One of the best athletes in the industry, combined with being smoother than butter in between the ropes, makes Ospreay one of the best wrestlers on the planet, and this match was incredible. The selling, the pace, the build, they did a beautiful backdrop, the drop kick into the steps by Ospreay, great German suplexes by Dax, diving headbutt attempt. They built it up and started going back and forth with great stuff at a great pace. Amazing sequence after another, but yet still managing to let everything breathe and let the crowd really get into the match, and that eventually built them up into a frenzy, and what would end up being one of the best Dynamite matches of the entire year. Will Ospreay won because it's Dax Harwood, and apparently in singles matches he can only beat his partner Cash, but regardless, this match was spectacular, and I strongly suggest you check it out if you haven't already. Number 8, Jon Moxley versus Wheeler Yuta, Rampage, April 8th. Wrestling's hardest working man, Jon Moxley, who apparently will never get to go on vacation, had an absolute banger of a year, and this was one of his finest moments. Wheeler Yuta was a top prospect on the Indies and started to gain some steam in AEW by having good performances in the limited roles that he was given. This match was his coming out party. The crimson mask that covers his face as he puts Mox in a bulldog choke and screams at the top of his lungs while looking up to the sky in an almost primal way because he's putting every ounce of his being into trying to choke the life out of Moxley, and it is one of the most goosebump-inducing moments of the entire year of any pro wrestling company. When Yuta kicked out of the paradigm shift, it was incredible. When he kicked out of the Death Rider, the elevated version that no one kicks out of, it was surreal. Moxley ended up pulling out the win with a bulldog choke of his own, but this was the night that Wheeler Yuta showed what he was truly capable of, and also became a member of the Blackpool Combat Club, cementing himself as a mainstay act in AEW. This night made Wheeler Yuta a made man, and this was in large part due to Moxley being so giving in this match. Good guy Mox. Be like Mox. Speaking of Mox, number 7, Jon Moxley versus CM Punk, AEW World Championship, All Out. All Out, and specifically CM Punk for the night, is going to be remembered for other things. But what shouldn't be lost is the fact that he and Mox also had an incredible match that night. Starting off the match by playing off the shocking title unification bout that took place a couple weeks earlier, with the roles being reversed this time. Moxley playing the heel in this match and being even more aggressive and vicious than usual. CM Punk getting perfect color and selling like he's on his way to the electric chair the whole match. The crowd was 100% behind the hometown hero, and that kind of hometown crowd emotion and reaction is really what made this special. When you can get a crowd to really care about who wins, that is what wrestling is really supposed to be. Punk hitting a GTS only to have Moxley collapse on top of him, forcing Punk 20 minutes deep into the match, and with a legit torn pec, had to lift Moxley and his dead weight as the crowd starts to get louder and louder and louder the higher he gets Mox off the ground, before getting him into another GTS and reclaiming his AEW championship in front of his hometown crowd. It is one of my favorite finishes to an AEW match of all time. And then with a returning MJF and All Out going off the air with MJF and Punk stare down, AEW was about to continue arguably the best feud in company history, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Oh, how great that short period of hope was. Before we get into number 6, if you've gotten this far and enjoyed the video, please give it a like. YouTube will push my videos out to more wrestling fans like you and me. Subscribe and click the notification bell to be alerted for more videos like this one, and make sure to follow me on Twitter at RefBumpMax. Number 6, Cody Rhodes versus Sammy Guevara, TNT Championship Unification Ladder Match, Dynamite Beach Break. In what would turn out to be Cody's last match in AEW, he competed in a title unification bout against Sammy Guevara to unify the TNT Championships and crown one undisputed champion. And boy, did this match deliver big time. They shake hands at the start. Sammy shoots the imaginary armed Anderson Glock at Cody. They go into the crowd, cut her off the barricade by Sammy. Giant delayed vertical superplex off of a ladder. This crazy ass bump Sammy took. This crazy ass bump Sammy took. This crazy ass bump Sammy took. The crowd going back and forth with their Cody chants. And then this. That cutter spot. One of the greatest spots in AEW history. Sammy ends up winning as Cody does the honors on his way out of AEW, and we were left with an instant classic ladder match. And Cody left the company with a performance he could be more than proud of. Number 5, CM Punk versus MJF, Dynamite 2/2/22 in Chicago. Because nobody in that locker room is on my level, were the words said by MJF on the November 17th edition of Dynamite in 2021 that drew the attention of CM Punk, causing him to come to the ring and eventually spurn an MJF handshake attempt. And just like that, we would be going down the path that would lead us to arguably the best feud in AEW history. One of the most highly anticipated matches in Dynamite, CM Punk wrestling MJF in his hometown after months of incredible storytelling. They built up the match perfectly. The nod to Terry Funk, a pace that changed. They went into the crowd. MJF illegally chokes CM Punk with the wrist tape once they get back in the ring. but he hides it with a sleeper hold and the ref doesn't see it. Punk's hand drops 3 times and MJF gets his hand raised and the crowd goes silent. MJF's music plays and the referee raises his hand and the tape falls out. The ref sees it and makes eye contact with MJF and the crowd starts to rumble. The match is restarted and CM Punk is back on offense and raining punches down in the corner on MJF, and now the crowd is going ballistic. Punk pulled out a reverse Hurricane Rana. He hit the Pepsi plunge for the first time in 17 years, the Macho Man elbow, the near fall after MJF hits a low blow. CM Punk calls for the GTS. They are on the outside. Wardlow comes out and steps in front of the prone MJF before stepping to the side and letting Punk roll MJF into the ring. The crowd went nuts, and everyone thought they just saw the face turn of Wardlow, but it was not meant to be, as he had slipped MJF the Dynamite Diamond ring, which MJF then used to hit CM Punk, pinning him 1-2-3 in the middle of the ring in Chicago. It was shocking. MJF had not only beaten CM Punk, he had beaten him twice in one night and in his hometown. In one night, CM Punk had pushed MJF to the next level, and the devil himself was proven to be more than ready for the spot. However, this rivalry was far from over, and the best was yet to come. Number 4. Young Bucks vs. FTR2, Dynamite, April 6th. Fans had clamored to see the Young Bucks take on the then-known Revival, considered two of the very best at the craft of tag team wrestling. All men had hinted and teased at the match for years, but it wouldn't be a possibility until 2020, when Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder made their AEW debut under the new ring names Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, also under the new tag team moniker of FTR. The match that these two had first occurred at Full Gear 2020, in an incredible match that saw FTR have the Young Bucks beat before Dax Harwood would attempt a high-flying maneuver to show the Young Bucks they could beat them at their own game. This ended up costing FTR the win. 2 years later, with the babyface and heel roles reversed, the two teams would meet up on the April 6th edition of Dynamite, and it was amazing. The fans were 100% behind FTR, and the crowd actually being invested in who wins and who loses instead of just cheering for cool moves is what made this match so special. Taking place almost entirely in the ring, the Bucks get great heat, Dax gets the hot tag, and he's a house of fire running through. A double bridge with Dax and Matt Jackson, the Young Bucks hit their own big rig, the splash moonsault combo from the Bucks, the tug of war with the belt that led to a belt shot, and an incredible save from Dax where the fans had thought that it was over for sure. A BTE trigger to Cash where he gets his foot on the ropes, and the fans once again for sure thought the match was over. FTR lands a BTE trigger of their own before hitting a big rig for the win, and the crowd exploded. Probably the best tag team match in AEW history and the 4th best match overall for the company in 2022. Number 3. Hangman Page vs. Bryan Danielson 2, AEW Championship, Dynamite, January 5th. Hangman Page had just completed AEW's longest character arc in company history. The story of his rise and fall and rise once more, the back and forth with the Elite, was very complex and would take a long time to explain. There's plenty of videos on that saga, one of which was a great piece by the content creator Tranquilo Club, who I highly recommend watching. But after that story was completed, Hangman Page was left standing as AEW champion, hoping he could go on a run that would truly establish him as a main event act in the company. His first challenge would be a Bryan Danielson that had turned heel to kick off the feud. A throwback heel, sort of a British World of Sport wrestling heel, one that was good and knew it, using his superior wrestling technique to toy with his opponents. This is legitimately one of the best versions of Bryan Danielson, and it's a shame that it didn't last very long. This would be the second match between the two after having an instant classic 60-minute draw on Dynamite in December, and expectations were sky high by the time that January 5th Dynamite rolled around, and they managed to deliver another classic. This match had judges in place just to ensure that another draw wouldn't happen. Paul White, Mark Henry, and Jerry Lynn were ringside in case this match went 60 minutes. Danielson powders out of the ring and starts doing jumping jacks. This match was Hangman Page trying to open up and get on the offense, and Bryan Danielson shutting him down with technical superiority and being snobby as hell about it. But each time Hangman Page would get a little more offense in. Hangman Page catches Danielson after he goes for a dive and delivers a beautiful belly to belly. Page gets busted open on the steps. Bryan then capitalizes with a brutal looking straight punch directly to the cut. He then starts headbutting and punching the cut more until Hangman is a bloody mess. This looked like a fight. A Death Valley driver by Page. This is awesome chance. Page busts Bryan open, and now Page is doing jumping jacks and mocking Bryan. This was beautifully put together match, and it was pro wrestling at its best. Adam Page ended up retaining in one of the best matches of the year, and bravo to both men. Number 2. Will Ospreay versus Orange Cassidy, Forbidden Door. Many fans were disappointed when Will Ospreay's opponent for Forbidden Door, the massive New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW crossover show, was revealed to be Orange Cassidy. After some pipe dreams of Omega returning from injury to be his opponent, and wanting to see him face guys like Hangman Page, Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, and wrestlers in that vein, people were slightly disappointed that he was seemingly wrestling someone lower on the totem pole than himself. However, those who knew, and this match was going to be a banger, and it was. I actually had the chance to see this event in person. I bought tickets after CM Punk won the title as a little birthday present to myself, to hopefully see CM Punk defend that title against a top New Japan star. Oh my. But this pay-per-view ended up being tremendous, and perhaps this was the best match of them all. The match was stupid fun in the best way possible. Will Ospreay starts the match lightly, taking Orange Cassidy not very seriously, like most Orange Cassidy matches. And by the end of it, he was giving 110% of himself to not only try to beat Orange Cassidy, but he was doing that just to keep up with Orange Cassidy and hope he'd have a chance to win in the end. The reversals, the near falls, and the crowd. The crowd was eating up every minute of this match, especially when Orange Cassidy hit Beach Break and people thought he was going to do it. People thought he was going to win. Will Ospreay eventually put him away in what would go down as one of the best AEW matches of the year, and it ranks second on my list. Number 1. MJF versus CM Punk Dog Collar Match, Revolution. Wrestling is more than moves. The context the move is applied and the story behind the match can often be the difference between a great display of athleticism and a fun watch to being emotionally invested and hanging on the edge of your seat, holding your breath for every pinfall attempt. No match had more emotion, story, build-up, or more satisfying payoff than MJF versus CM Punk at Revolution. The incredible dog collar promo where Punk pulled out a picture of himself with a young MJF, to MJF revealing his villain origin story in an emotionally gripping promo segment. Then, the next week, CM Punk gets in the ring, and he and MJF went on to put on one of the most captivating promo segments in AEW history that ended in an equally spectacular visual. MJF was up 1-0. MJF had fooled CM Punk. MJF was younger and appeared to be sharper and hungrier. Then, in a backstage promo segment, CM Punk turned back the clock all the way to 2003 and appeared to be full of the same venom and rage that had made him a household name.
You want to call me PG Punk? You want to pretend like I'm not that same guy? You want that same guy that you grew up idolizing? Congratulations, Maxwell, Jacob, Friedman, but you're not ready.
And just like that, the dog collar match was set. MJF versus CM Punk. MJF had a fantastic entrance swerve when CM Punk's theme music first hit, only to be interrupted by his. But then, one of the most amazing moments in AEW history followed. Punk comes out to his old ROH theme, wearing his old ROH-inspired gear, the same week that Tony Khan announced he had bought ROH, making this feel like a perfect storm. CM Punk had brought back the Second City Saint, the underdog. The man MJF looked up to as a kid was now standing in front of him as the referee strapped the dog collars on them. And they went on to have an instant classic. The chain shots, eat shit Max, now we go to school as Punk channeled his Ric Flair, the thumbtacks, and then MJF calls for Wardlow and he comes down to the ring just to hand MJF the ring just like he did in Chicago. And he acts like he can't find it, letting CM Punk hit MJF with the GTS, and he fell into the thumbtacks before Wardlow suddenly found the ring, allowing Punk to deliver the knockout shot and pin MJF 1, 2, 3. CM Punk was back. Many fans had complained that he wasn't having big matches soon enough or that he wasn't the same, but it wouldn't have made sense for CM Punk to come back the same. He was different. He was happy. It would take a feud and a moment and a match like this to bring back the old CM Punk, and he delivered in a huge way. Then the press scrum where he openly cried talking about his love of wrestling, a man that had once had that love drained out of him and was gone for 7 years, had fallen back in love after telling one of the best stories in wrestling. And just as equally important in this was MJF, who forced CM Punk to up his game to his prime level to match MJF. And that's one of the biggest compliments a wrestler can get. Perfect pro wrestling. Just great. And in my opinion, it was the best match of 2022 and the perfect cap to AEW's greatest story, at least for the moment. This is the end of the video. Thanks for watching the Ref Bump. Comment your top 10 AEW matches below from 2022 and like and subscribe for more content in the future. Top Guy, out.